Oh, hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, depending on which part of this beautiful country that you're in. You're watching Rebel Roundup. I'm your regular host, Sheila Gunn Reid, and I'm joined by a rotating host today, my friend and colleague, Tamara Ugolini. Tamara, how's it going?
Hey, Sheila. Well, it's pretty good. I might just say and kick off that we are coming out of almost 5 days without running water at my house. So it is
You look
much
great.
better today. Thanks. Yeah, finally, I was able to shower. No, we ended up just packing up and leaving because it was way too much trying to jug water. And you actually don't realize how much water you use until you don't have it. And as a large family,
Yeah.
it was very trying time. So I am happy to be back to normal in our household, and that makes me even more efficient in my job and role here. So it's great to be back and on the live stream. And how are things going at West?
You know, it's great irony that I look like the unshowered one today, but we're in the middle of a raging snowstorm again. So we had a false spring twice now. And it's a terrible, catastrophic snowstorm outside, but that is to be expected here on the prairies. other than that, we're in the throes of this election campaign, and every day it's another gaffe from the Liberals, and I'm just excited to talk about it. So let's tell everybody, maybe I'll let you do that, tell everybody how they can talk about these issues with us, and then we'll get into the news of the day.
Yes. So if you're joining us, we are streaming on Rumble and YouTube. And on YouTube, we have been remonetized. So if you'd like to help us out and support our work and have your voice heard during our live stream on the larger platform, for a $5 donation or more, if you feel so inclined, we will read your comment while we are here for the next hour or so. I think it's called a super chat. And then if you're joining us after the fact, you can give us a super thanks. And so, of course, thank you for anybody who wants to support us either during or after the stream. And if you're on Rumble, that's the free speech platform that we really have had utilized throughout the COVID censorship happenings. And so we always like to give a shout out to our friends over at Rumble, who and where we continue to publish uncensored reports that may go against YouTube's quote unquote community standards or community guidelines. So if you're joining us on either one of those platforms, there's a couple different ways to support us, and we appreciate all of you at home, because without your generosity and support, we wouldn't be able to continue to do this work. And of course, kicking off today, we have once again, we're back in the tariff spat with President Donald Trump in the US, who has now made an announcement that he is going to put a 25% tariff on all vehicles not made in the USA. I guess before we get into that clip that we have of him and providing some commentary on that, Trump is also calling out Canada, and I would say more specifically our prime minister, which I squirm calling him such, but nonetheless, he is Prime Minister Mark Carney, who's been in the role, what, 10 days, not even 2 weeks yet.
Yeah.
And so Donald Trump took to Truth Social to post that if the European Union works with Canada in order to do economic harm to the USA, large scale tariffs, like the one that we will share with you here now, far larger than currently planned, will be placed on them both in order to protect the best friend that each of those two countries has ever had. And so this comes after Mark Carney, when he was sworn in as prime minister, decided to jet set over to the UK instead of actually calling or going to meet with President Donald Trump amid these trade tensions and this tariff war and this escalation, and very much a lack of negotiation that seems to be taking place on the federal level. So that was his priority, was to head on over and meet with Macron instead of going and meeting with Trump. And so now Trump has put this out on Truth Social. And at the same time that he has announced this 25% tariff on all cars, vehicles, cars not made in the US, which maybe we'll just play that clip and we'll come back and comment on it.
So we'll effectively be charging a 25% tariff. But if you build your car in the United States, there is no tariff. And what that means is a lot of foreign car companies, a lot of companies are going to be in great shape because they've already built their plant, but their plants are underutilized, so they'll be able to expand them inexpensively and quickly. If parts are made in America and a car isn't, those parts are not going to be taxed or tariffed. And we'll have very strong policing as far as that's concerned. For the most part, I think it's going to lead cars to be made in one location. Right now, a car would be made here, sent to Canada, sent to Mexico, sent all over the place. It's ridiculous. So this is a very simple system. And the beauty of the 25, it's one number. It's not up or down depending on the cost of the car. It's one number. And that number is going to be used to reduce debt greatly in the United States and to build things, reduce taxes. I mean, basically, I view it as reducing taxes and also reducing debt. And within a fairly short period of time, I think we're going to have a balance sheet that's going to be outstanding. So,
do these auto tariffs go into effect today or on April 2nd?
They go into effect on April 2nd. We're signing today. It goes into effect April 2nd. We start collecting on April 3rd.
Yeah, so there you have it. I just wanted to share this post from Ryan Garrettson, who notes that automobiles and parts compliant under the USMCA. So that's the current trade agreement between the US, M is Mexico, and CA is Canada. And so under that trade agreement, there will be certain stipulations that are tariff free. And perhaps that will change with more signing of various orders, it says here in consultation with US Customs and Border Protection and the Secretary of Commerce. So there are some things that aren't entirely clear based on the hysterical headlines of the mainstream media. They just run with this trade war, 25% tariffs on vehicles. They don't do any sort of due diligence or dig a little bit deeper into what those trade agreements stipulate and specify. So we'll see what actually happens there. But it seems like, and I had another post here from Harrison Fields. He's the deputy press secretary for the White House. And so it says here that USMCA compliant automobile parts will remain tariff free until that consultation happens. And so I don't know if this is the big bad wolf deal that the mainstream media is making it out to be. But nonetheless, it has completely derailed Carney's campaign tour plans. He has detoured from his campaigning to apparently finally now, this was the nail in the coffin for Mark Carney, that he has now decided to finally deal with Trump's tariffs. I mean, specifically the auto tariffs. But he announced that he's heading back to Ottawa and he'll no longer be following the campaign trail to deal with the fallout of a new auto tariff announced by US President Donald Trump. And Sheila, I think that I have a sneaky suspicion that this is actually because Carney can't maintain any sort of decorum in front of the media.
Yeah.
When he's out on the campaign trail and he's questioned. You saw yesterday he had that little hissy fit.
Any reason to get off the campaign trail, honestly.
Yeah. And he's only been on it for 4 days.
Yeah.
And we're already seeing Carney's true colors shine through when he's off cuff, off the script with the media questions. He can't handle it. It seems to me that he can't handle it. And so this is, in my view, a really convenient excuse for Mark Carney to say, oh, I better go back to Ottawa to finally deal with my actual priority, some real priorities and responsibilities, rather than having done that when he first took office almost 10 days ago.
Yeah. If Mark Carney were remotely serious about this, again, his first trip would have been to Washington. And he wouldn't have been flat out lying about his attempts to communicate with President Trump. If this were a real concern for the Liberals, they would not have prorogued Parliament so they could run a leadership race. Now we find ourselves in the middle of an election campaign and no government really who can deal with the tariff threat. And really, the blame lays on Jagmeet Singh. If he had let the government fall months ago, we would have a new government in place. We probably wouldn't have these extreme tariffs because we would have a government in place that wasn't responsible for the devolution of the relationship with the Americans. Instead, we don't really have a government in place. We have an unelected prime minister who has Trump derangement syndrome, who thought that his first order of business should be shoring up the anti-Trump cabal with the Europeans. And that is what Trump's Truth Social post was all about. He basically said, I see what you tried to do with the Europeans. And if any of you get any ideas, you guys are in for a world of hurt. They think they're smarter than Trump. Trump is cagier than the works. And instead of just shutting up and getting down to work, now we've got Carney convening his task force or whatever, and putting his campaign on park, which is, as you rightly point out, a convenient way to get his lack of patience with the media off the campaign trail.
Yeah, exactly. He takes to social media to post he made this announcement here. We have a clip. It's a bit long, but maybe we have time to share it in
Yeah.
its entirety, where he was reacting to this new tariff, the new
Yeah.
25% tariff.
As if any of this is a shock, by the way. Trump's been threatening tariffs since he took office, and the Liberals thought they could rag the puck until it changed their poll prospects, and I guess it did. But the crushing effect this is going to have on the Canadian economy should not come as a surprise to anybody. It's not like Trump didn't exactly tell us what he was going to do for months now.
President Trump announced 25% tariffs against our auto industry. And this is a direct attack, to be clear, a direct attack on the very workers that I stood in front of, uniform workers I stood in front of this morning at the Ambassador Bridge, a bridge that is a symbol and a reality up until now of the tight ties between our two countries, ties of kinship, ties of commerce, ties that are in the process of being broken. We will defend our workers. We'll defend our companies. We'll defend our country, and we'll defend it together. You know, this will hurt us, but through this period, by being together, we will emerge stronger. I think what's happened, and this was part of our discussion, over the course of the last several months, Canadian workers, Canadians as a whole across this country, have gotten over the shock of the betrayal
Several
and
months.
are learning lessons.
Even he
We
says
have to look
several
out for
months
ourselves,
this has
and
been
we
in the
have
works.
to look out for each other and work
We're all
together
in
for
this
each other.
together.
And I just want to say a few words before taking some questions about what my government has done to turn that sentiment into reality. We made a commitment a few weeks ago to use every dollar that we collect from retaliatory tariffs to support workers, to directly go to support workers. And last week, we made a series of changes to the EI system in order to take the first big step to make good on that promise. There'll be more. We've announced, of course, retaliatory tariffs. We have other options for those retaliatory tariffs. I have asked for a meeting, I will convene rather, a meeting of the Canada-US cabinet tomorrow to discuss our trade options. But we're also providing the option of major liquidity for our companies. We put in place an ability for companies to delay tax payments. We've put in place a large facility for our largest companies, some of them which may be affected by this, would be affected by this, to draw on liquidity in various forms so that they can take longer-term decisions without undue pressure from short-term unjustified actions. It's also why we focused, in part in anticipation of what might happen, on today's announcement that I made in front of that Ambassador Bridge
It's too boring.
for the $2 billion
It's killing me.
strategic response.
Yeah, I could watch him at 2 times the speed because that is just so long and drawn out to really not say a whole lot. And the liquidity thing now all of a sudden Carney cares about keeping business in Canada. Seems a bit hypocritical given that when he was chair of Brookfield, they left and went to the US. And, you know, in a roundabout way, he's basically saying, hopefully businesses don't do that now. So we're going to let them defer their taxes for a little bit. This obviously doesn't seem like any sort of tangible solution to a tariff threat and potential war.
Yeah, and let's not remember how his Canada-US trade panel is just a bunch of washed-up left-wing cranks with Trump derangement syndrome. This was the best he could come up with. He couldn't put anybody on that panel that actually had a good relationship with Trump, because isn't that what you want when you're dealing with somebody in trade negotiations? No, he appoints Jean Charest, Stephen McNeil, Rachel Notley of all people. What does she know about business except to run it out of town? And Notley's former chief of staff, who is a union crazy person, Brian Topp, who's like an environmental radical, and also who's the bad dragon from Dragon's Den, the lady,
Oh,
Arlene.
yeah, Arlene something.
Yeah, you couldn't even appoint Mr. Wonderful, who's got like a weekend pass, it seems, every week down at Mar-a-Lago. No, they picked the
Dickinson.
bad. Yeah, Arlene Dickinson. They appoint Arlene onto this panel instead of old Mr. Wonderful. Like it's these are the people who he's reconvening his emergency war room to deal with Trump. Just a bunch of washed up left-wing losers. Like it's just God help us. It's a
And if
surprise things aren't worse.
Well, and if those are the remarks that we're getting from a prime minister who's supposed to be, leading the country and offering reassurance through tumultuous, tough times, I don't think that is it at all. He finally acknowledges that the tariffs are going to hurt us, Canada, the economy. So I think that's kind of a breath of fresh air, but it's not very nothing in there reassured Canadians after he led with, these are going to hurt us, and I guess elbows up, because we're going to talk more about it later.
And
There was nothing reassuring in there.
and let's talk about what he means by retaliatory tariffs. So those are tariffs on things coming into the country made in America that will make things that are made in America cost more for Canadians. Then they're going to take the money that they are charging on those tariffs. So they're going to take the money from overcharging Canadians and then redistribute it to the hardest hit sectors in Ontario and Quebec in a vote buying scheme. So everything costs more for Canadians, and then they're going to take that money and give it to the auto sector in Quebec and Ontario. Great.
We have
Nice
another
plan.
clip. Yeah, we have another clip here. I don't know if I guess we'll see if we can get through it, but it's basically where Carney is, acknowledging that he does have to have a conversation with President
I want
Trump
to
again.
point this out
Why?
because this is a lie, by the way. And we'll get to that in a second because he was fact checked by the Americans on this. Don't count on the Canadian mainstream media to do it. But the Americans were like, did that really happen? Let's dig. And this is the difference between liberal money and a free market in the media.
On whether it's time to cut President Trump.
Yeah, I think it would be appropriate that the President and I speak, given the action that he's taken. I'm sure that will happen soon. I'm not going to give you a precise timing on that. In terms of options, which was the second part of Ms. Martin's question, even during a caretaker period of government, we have anticipated this possibility. We have put in place the mechanisms so that if it is appropriate for retaliatory tariffs, and there's many considerations to be taken in those regards, and I want to have the meeting of our cabinet, Canada-U.S. cabinet, other considerations. We need to see the details of the executive order, but we will take the steps that are in the interests of Canadian workers of Canada. We are going to stand up for Canada. We're going to be united, and we will fight in a unified way. And I would say, if I may, and I will, Lana and Ms. Payne can speak for herself, obviously, the discussions that we've had, the discussions I've had with Premier Ford, we're entirely aligned in terms of the seriousness with which we're taking this and the seriousness of our response. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So as Jason Leiter points out on X, and Jason's with Enterprise Canada, follows this stuff very carefully. He said, Carney's lies are so weird. Earlier, he said he wanted to look tough by saying he wouldn't reach out until Trump showed respect. Remember that clip from the other day? So journalists actually called the White House. Turns out Carney had asked. It's like he's never had a job where people checked his work. Just stupid fibs for no reason. And then it says it's been reported for about 10 days the PMO had been trying to organize a call with Trump. The White House position on waiting is perfectly logical. But anyways, a couple of days ago, Carney looked straight into the cameras and said he wouldn't call and didn't want one until Trump showed respect, despite having his team badger the White House for a call. It's baffling. But this is what happens when you jet off to Europe instead of down to Washington to save the Canadian economy. You gave Trump the cold shoulder. Now you're getting it back.
And again, this all goes back to our porous borders, unabated immigration, allowing toxic, deadly drugs to proliferate on our streets. And so if we want to protect Canadians, if we want to protect Canada, if we want to protect workers, as Carney would have you believe in those clips there, perhaps cleaning up our streets, dealing with this unmitigated immigration that we have that is causing a collapse of our social systems and our frameworks, from our healthcare to our housing to our cost of living. This is how you would help Canadians and help Canadian workers. And yet that has fallen entirely to the wayside and has been on the trajectory to end us up in this mess for quite literally years. And now all of a sudden everybody's paying attention, but kind of like look over here, not over there, with these Trump tariffs that came to a head because of these otherwise unmitigated, unabated issues that are proliferating on Canadian streets.
Now, we've got the Poilievre remarks on this. And look, Poilievre's running to be the Prime Minister of Canada. He's campaigning on literally Canada first. So he's saying we need to target goods and services that we don't need and that we can buy elsewhere. Not this like blanket, everything coming in the door is going to get a tariff slapped on it. The cost to Canadians be damned. And then we're going to redistribute all the money we've collected off the backs of Canadians, might I add, in a tariff. So let's hear what Poilievre has to say.
I want to start by condemning, without equivocation, the unjustified and unprovoked tariffs that President Trump has now announced against our auto sector. These tariffs will damage his workers and his economy, just as they will damage ours. We must retaliate and target goods and services that we don't need, can buy elsewhere, or make ourselves to maximize the impact on the Americans while minimizing the impact on ourselves. But before I go any further about these unjustified tariffs and how we're going to respond to them, let me speak to the workers in the auto sector. You're afraid right now. You're anxious. You wonder how you're going to pay your mortgage or put food on the table. You're thinking about the conversations you may need to have with your little children about whether they can register for next year's hockey or this summer's soccer. You don't know if you'll be able to stay in the same city or what's going to happen to your future. Canada will be there for you. We will be there for you. We will ensure that you have income replacement to put food on the table and money in your bank account. We'll make sure that businesses directly affected will have the liquidity they need to get through that businesses directly able and money in your bank account. We'll make sure that businesses directly affected will have the liquidity they need to get through this dispute. And we will unite as Canadians to protect our affected sectors. But more than that, we need to become strong, self-reliant, sovereign, so that we can stand on our own 2 feet and stand up to the Americans. What is clear is that 10 years of economic weakness have made us more reliant than ever on the Americans. 75% of our exports go to one country. Almost all of our energy, most of our raw materials go south because we can't get them anywhere else. We need to take drastic action to build an economic fortress in Canada, able to reach other markets around the world, repealing the anti-pipeline law, rapidly building LNG liquefaction plants, mines, factories, expanding and making our ports functional so that we can move our goods to other places around the world, knocking down the barriers between our provinces so that we can trade with ourselves for a change. Passing a bring it home tax cut on work, investment, home building, and energy to make this the best place in the world to bring back the $500 billion that Liberals pushed out of the country over the last decade. Then and only then will we be able to properly stand up to the Americans and stand up for ourselves. Now is not a time for weakness. Now is not a time to continue on with the failures that got us into this place of dependency. Now is the time to take back control and relaunch our economy so that we can confront the president's unjustified threats and tariffs in a position of strength. We will do this for our people, for our land, for our home, for Canada first, for a change. Thank you.
You know, I don't entirely agree that they're unjustified. I think that the only person who took stringent action on the tariff threat when it was still a threat back in the fall of last year was Danielle Smith. She seems to be the only person who took this seriously enough, implemented real tangible changes at the border and other measures to curb the influx of drugs and human trafficking coming through our borders. And I believe that because no one else really did anything and didn't take any of this seriously,
Yep.
that's how we ended up in this mess that we are in now. So I don't agree with Trump's tariffs. I don't agree with the measures that he's taking. But I do agree that this has brought on a very important conversation that many Canadians, like we have done here at Rebel News, reporting on these topics for the last few years, with the proliferation of crime, drug trafficking, the fallout of unabated immigration. We've been trying to raise the alarm on these issues for years, and all of that has been entirely ignored. And until Trump came in and started threatening these tariffs, that got the conversation going. And now it's just kind of being sideswept as, you know, that they're unjustified or that other things are happening. But this, you know, anybody who is paying attention, as Poilievre should have been doing, as anyone in the Liberal Party should have been doing. I mean, the NDP, I think, is kind of irrelevant, but they also should have been paying attention. This is not news. This isn't coming out of left field. We've had months prepare for this. And thanks to the ineptitude on the federal level and a government that can't seem to know what the right hand and the left hand are doing and coordinate those two things, now we're here. So I don't entirely agree that it's unjustified. But I do think that with a strong government that had a strong mandate, this could have been entirely avoided.
I'll tell you what this feels like as an Albertan who lived through the combined devastation of the NDP and their Liberal enablers in Ottawa. This is a real gut punch because nobody cared about us when something far worse was happening to us thanks to bottlenecks and hindrance caused by our own provincial government and the federal government in Ottawa. In the first 14 months of Rachel Notley being in power between 2015 and 2016, we lost 85,000 jobs in a province at the time, roughly just a little under 4 million. I think it went up to about 185,000 jobs were lost during their tenure, most of them in the oil patch and support sectors, and then trickled on down into hospitality, retail, because, you know, if you don't have a job in the oil patch, you're not buying the new pickup. You're not going on vacation. You're not having fun. You're not going. And in these oil patch towns, it's, you know, the hotels are full of guys who are there to work. They're filling up their trucks with diesel. They're eating out every night. It turns towns into ghost towns. Our unemployment rate here hit 9% in 2016. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. I didn't hear the same kind words for us, even from the federal Conservatives, who were the only ones raising the issue. And so now when I see that the oil or that the automotive sector, the country is grinding to a halt. A federal election campaign is coming to a screeching halt. Panels are being convened to deal with this stuff, and nobody cared about us. So if you wonder why Albertans are saying, what are we doing here? This is why. Because it was carnage in our economy, thanks to the Liberals and the NDP. Same people who are running now. In fact, the NDP that were running the province during those dark days, now they're running for the Carney Liberals. That's Rod Leola. Nobody cared about us. And so when you see the rising a separatist sentiment, I hope you understand a little bit of it now, how it feels for us to watch all the powers of the federal government, as inept as it is, being rallied to support the auto sector in Ontario. And we're wondering, where was that for us? We just wanted to work. We didn't want help. We just wanted to work, and nobody cared.
Yeah, open up the economy. Let's tap into our vast resources. We have a wealth of things that can be opened up, the oil and gas sector, and we're off to the races. But now, instead of doing any of that, we're stuck on the campaign trail for the next month, with Carney being so slow and difficult to listen to. I am not looking forward to the next month ahead, but I am looking forward to have a hopeful change in government. With that said, I think we have a super chat here to get to. Oh, it's just a
2,
backyard
3.
garden. Gives
Yeah, we have actually a
$10.
few.
Thank you very much. Sheila, do you want to go through the other ones there?
Sure, yeah.
Oh,
I've got one from Arlene, 1971. Is this you, Arlene Dickinson? I bet it isn't. But they
No.
explained to us Arlene Dickinson, who and what she is. She's on Dragon's Den. Arlene Dickinson, board director for cannabis products company Afria, now acquired under Tilray. Afria was one of the largest cannabis companies in the world. Gerald Butt's wife sits on this board. I did not know that. I cannot confirm or deny, but I would not be surprised because it is an incestuous little cesspit in and around the Ottawa bubble. AMT 60 gives us $5. Do you think that Rebel News and other independent media will be allowed to be at the English debate in this election? I know that Carney or Singh won't answer, but Pierre probably will. We're going to do our best. As you know, we had to sue the government last minute in the last 2 federal elections, and we won. Our intrepid lawyers beat the entire Trudeau at the time Justice Department on one weekend, no sleep, and a bunch of coffee. And you know what? If we have to, we'll do it again, because we're there to ask the questions that you want answers to, not the same climate change questions you're going to get out of CBC, local, Radio Canada, and something else.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're
we've got a
working
quick
on
ad
it, so
read.
stay tuned.
Yeah, we are. We've already started work on it, so don't worry. I'll do the ad read and then we'll hit an ad break. Does that sound good? And then we'll come back with Alberta stuff or prairie stuff, Western stuff. Okay, so this is from 1775coffee.com. Weak coffees for the week, and at Rumble, weak has never been part of the mission. No fillers, no fraud, and no settling for mediocrity, just like 1775 coffee. It's single origin, single farm, hand-picked, specialty grade coffee that stands for quality, free speech, and calling out BS when it matters. Forget stale, mass-produced beans roasted just enough to hide the flaws. Dark roast hits like a Trump tariff. Medium roast keeps it bold without the bitterness, and Vitality Mushroom Blend, real energy and lasting focus, no synthetic garbage. For K-Cup pods, whole bean, or fresh ground coffee, go to 1775coffee.com. Use code STUDIO for 15% off and start your morning with coffee that stands for something. And every dollar spent enters you to win a Cybertruck and $30,000 cash, some of which you can use to put up security cameras to keep the lefties away from it, or at least catch them after they attempt to damage it. I think that's it. Let's hit a Rebel News ad break, and then we'll come back with the next segment.
Mark Carney agrees with Hamas. So do they. If he wins, we lose our streets forever. Is this your Canada or theirs?
Why should you join Canada's National Firearms Association? We currently have one of the most aggressively anti-firearm governments in our nation's history, promoting fear and placing blame like never before. Our rights, freedoms, culture, and heritage, it's all on the line. But we are fighting back, and there is strength in numbers. We work within the law to change the law, to defend competitors, hunters, collectors, and other law-abiding firearms owners. We can get through this. We've done it before, and we'll do it again, if you are with us. Canada's National Firearms Association. Freedom, safety, responsibility.
Mark Carney was caught with Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking sidekick. Prince Andrew, Epstein's client, paid for a lavish party for Mark Carney at Buckingham Palace. And now it turns out Mark Carney's wife's family is in Epstein's notorious black book, 7 numbers, 2 addresses. We have questions, but Carney ordered police to block independent reporters.
Sure, you need to relax. It sounds like you're getting very aggravated.
I am.
What is the truth about Mark Carney and Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, that's a perfect segue into the next video that we have to share with you.
We make no veracity. Yeah, we make no claims about the veracity of the heckle. Okay, we're just showing you the heckle. But we do know, as the For Canada ad points out, that there are tangential ties between Canada's Prime Minister and Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficker. I hope I can keep us on YouTube, but I don't know. So anyways, Carney got heckled on this, and it's funny because the mainstream media won't ask any questions related to this. So now people are left to fill in the blanks. So let's hear it.
On ne reconnaît pas les peuples autochtones.
How many kids did you molest with Jeffrey Epstein?
Honnêtement.
It's a weird reaction, right?
Yeah, the whole thing.
It's a weird reaction. Like, he laughs. If someone accused me of doing that to a child, I would be indignant. And he's like,
he's looking around.
That's weird.
He's looking around to gauge the reaction of the crowd. Like, oh no, did everybody just hear that? Because there's some questions there. When you have all these photos, and
I would not be smiling.
Evidence.
I would not be smiling if somebody accused me of that.
Or smirking even. No.
Yeah.
No, it's a very bizarre reaction, and I hope we can see more of this, especially as the For Canada truck makes its rounds with the visuals of Carney with Ghislaine.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, people are left to speculate because the media won't ask the question about these very valid pictures. Like, people there's that crazy lady in Alexa's video that says it's fake. That's a different chin, as if anybody's actually examined Mark Carney's boring chin. Why don't we look at the outline of his ear too, lady? But she says that's not Mark Carney. We know it is. His team was even forced to respond and say, that was at Mark Carney's sister-in-law's place, and the sister-in-law is friends with Ghislaine Maxwell. Okay. But you were laid out on the grass with her, and the media is just completely avoiding these questions. Imagine if this were a conservative, but it's not a Tory, so it's not a story, as they say.
That's right. Yeah. And the best disinfectant is sunlight. So let's roll those photos and see if people can demand some answers here. And I think that as you see Carney, 4 days into his campaign trail, when he's already canceling it under the guise of having to finally go meet with Donald Trump in Washington, he can't stand the heat. He can't stand these questions. He's getting off script. He doesn't have the decorum, and he cannot tuck his ego aside long enough to stay calm and collected. And I think that if these are the kinds of questions that are going to be flung at him, and the kind of outbursts that he may face when if he does get back to the campaign trail after this, who knows? He won't be able to hold his composure, and we will see more of Carney's true colors coming out, as we've already gotten a little taste of the last few days.
Yeah, and I don't think he's all that hard of a worker. You know what I mean? Like, a campaign is a grueling schedule, and you have to be on the whole time, which is difficult. You have to be a people person, which Carney isn't. I don't think he's used to working so hard. I really don't. And so I think the longer this goes on, the worse he's going to get, the testier he's going to get. And I'm here for it. I'm ready.
Yeah. Now we have another video, another clip to share with you that comes from Carney, and basically saying, you know, all the premiers, they all agree.
They don't like him.
That they hate the federal government. Everyone,
wonder
I think,
why
except
that
for
is.
Doug Ford.
Yeah, he's aligned.
Doug Ford.
They're like this.
Yeah, they're buddies. They have each other's backs.
Less than a week ago, we got agreement with all the premiers. All the premiers. Now, all the premiers, they only agree on one thing, which is that they hate the federal government. But we got agreement. We got them for the first time to agree on something different.
I don't know if that's funny. I mean, everyone's laughing, but like, that's not signaling a strong united front here in Canada when all of the premiers hate you.
Even the liberal ones. Yeah. And it's funny because he says less than a week ago, but as an outside observer, it feels like a friggin' month ago. Why is he so boring? Like even to deliver a joke, he's not good at. It takes too long. There's too many pauses. I don't know. He's just so unenjoyable there's nothing even fun to talk about.
And the only one who's really been truly outspoken on all of this since the onset, really, is Danielle Smith, Alberta Premier. And we have a clip here to share from the Alberta legislature where she says, point blank, I will not be silenced.
Yeah, she's been great this week. We'll show another clip after this.
And I am now off to the US yet again to try and speak to Americans, this time through the second largest podcaster in the world, whose audience is made up of exactly the people we need to persuade to convince their president to change course on tariffs against Canada. And what does Team Carney want me to do? They want me to abandon my post, remain in Alberta, and do absolutely nothing to defend our province. They want me to cower in the face of Eastern media pundits and politicians who favor political grandstanding to effective diplomacy. I'm fiercely criticized for going into the lion's den to change the hearts and minds of the very Americans that we need on Canada's side to avoid a trade war with the most powerful economy on earth. They want this lady and Alberta to just sit down and shut up. Well, here is my response to that. I will not be silent. Alberta will not be silent. We will not be pushed around and called traitors for merely having the courage to actually do something about our nation's and province's predicament other than merely indulging in self-righteous tantrums. And I, for one, will never be silenced by the party in Ottawa that has sold out our beloved province for the last 10 years with the help of their NDP collaborators.
My goodness. Sheila,
she's so
I think
great.
I'm coming to Alberta.
She's so great.
Time.
And what she's talking about there is she's going, I think it's today, she's doing a PragerU event. She's doing a podcast. As she said, it's the world's second largest podcast. And these are exactly the people we need to talk to. These are American Trumpy conservatives. We need to talk to them. Those are the people we need to plead our case to. We don't need to go on Democrat media, on MSNBC and CNN and talk to Trump's enemies. We need to talk to Trump's friends. And she's doing that, and she's fighting like hell for us. And I couldn't be more grateful because, again, if this were left up to Ottawa, there would be not a single oil export from Alberta, and all of our families would be unemployed.
Yeah, and meanwhile, here in Ontario, I see the stark difference between Premier Ford and Premier Smith, and especially, not to bring gender into everything, but as a female versus a male premier in Ontario, he's just such a weak cowardice, no leadership, no ability to, he's not standing on he doesn't have a spine, he doesn't have a backbone. And then you see this strong female leader here, as she says, going headfirst into the Dragon's Den, not in the sense of the show that we talked about earlier, but into the belly of the beast, so to speak. And Ottawa and all of her male counterparts are trying to silence her. This is just craziness. And I think the majority of Canadians, the silent majority, as they say, would do agree with Danielle Smith's approach. She's taken a tough approach. She's been there since day one, trying to negotiate, trying to implement things to tighten up our borders, to increase security, to clean up our streets. And what has her reward been from anyone else other than the support of Albertans? It's a sad state of affairs, if you ask me.
Yeah, she's been called, like she said, she's been called a traitor by the media and politicians in the east of the country. She fights for Alberta jobs. And if you're fighting for Alberta jobs, you're fighting for everybody else's job too. She's the only one with a decent relationship with the Trump administration. She should be deployed to Ottawa constantly. Deployed to Washington constantly. Now, Tamara, I just want to show you one more clip from 2 days ago from Premier Danielle Smith in the legislature. Why? Because it's cold and I want to feel the warmth of your envy through my monitor. Let's show that.
I don't know, Mr. Speaker. Are they for real? Do they really think that Justin Trudeau was the one out there advocating on behalf of the energy industry in the United States? The guy who imposed the No More Pipelines bill, the tanker ban, an emissions cap on oil, an emissions cap on methane, net zero power regs, net zero vehicles, net zero building construction. Mr. Speaker, those are all policies advanced by the NDP. It's the Liberal NDP coalition that is damaging this province, damaging our industry, and I'm the one standing up for it.
Yep, there it is. And just as her outfit, I am green with envy. And, you know, Scott Moe, the Premier of Saskatchewan, I should, be fair credit where it's due, that he has not been far behind. He did take a little bit of time to catch up, but he's catching up.
That's the Alberta-Saskatchewan relationship. For people who don't know, we often have the exact same viewpoint on everything, but as Albertans, we're a little more braggadocious about it. And so that's why we have Danielle Smith, and then we have Scott Moe, who's a little bit more calm. He's a little less showy. That's the difference between Alberta and Saskatchewan. It's like Texas and Oklahoma. They're voting the same way. They've got the same industries, but their attitudes are slightly different. So Scott Moe, he has made Saskatchewan the first carbon tax-free zone in the entire country. So let's hear from him.
Saskatchewan is now a carbon tax-free province, the first carbon tax-free province in Canada. Now that the two major federal parties and their leaders have announced their plans for removing the carbon tax, Saskatchewan is taking the next step by reducing the industrial carbon tax rate charged in our province to zero, to give our consumers a break and to make our industries more competitive in this new tariff environment. So what does this mean for you? Well, the immediate effect is the removal of the carbon tax on your Sask power bills, saving Saskatchewan families and small businesses hundreds of dollars a year. And in the longer term, it will reduce the cost of other consumer products that have the industrial carbon tax built right into their price. Saskatchewan is producing some of the most sustainable products in the world today. We want to create the environment to produce more of those sustainable products, to make our industries more competitive in the face of US and Chinese tariffs, and to protect and create Canadian jobs right here in Saskatchewan. Making Saskatchewan a carbon tax-free province will do just that. And I would hope that all of the parties running in the federal election would agree with those objectives and allow the provinces to regulate in this area without imposing the federal backstop.
Yeah, just anecdotally on the federal carbon tax that has been applied to all the provinces and territories. Here in Ontario, Enbridge Gas, I was just comparing notes with my dad because we were staying there when we didn't have running water for almost 5 days. But just anecdotally, looking at the breakdown of your bill, and I've posted this a couple times on X. I think David Menzies had a full report on it that was great, where he actually went to visit, I believe it was Enbridge's head office. But we are actually paying more in our federal carbon tax than we are for our natural gas. And so it is not only doubling our bills, but there's all these other little tiny hidden fees inserted in there.
Distribution
so for instance,
costs.
Yeah, delivery to the customer and tax on. So we also get taxed HST on the federal carbon charge. So for instance, my actual gas usage was roughly $60. The federal carbon tax charge was like $62.
Yeah.
And yet we're being told that, oh, you get it all back. Don't worry. You're going
Yeah.
to pay. And this is just one bill in particular. This isn't looking at other bills or all the ways that it's bundled into the rising costs of food and other goods that are shipped and manufactured and so on and so forth. The ripple effect. Yeah, here's one. I don't remember when did I post this, a few months ago anyway. But you can see the breakdown there. The actual usage, I don't have the link to that to pull it up and I can't see it. It's so small on my screen. But my actual
customer
usage.
charge, if you put that up, I'll zoom in on my Reader's Digest monitor out of the corner of my eye. But I think your carbon tax was like over $30 and your gas bill, like your gas usage was under 30. And then you had HST that was like $20. Yeah. Customer charge.
Here it is.
Yeah.
And so this is
$23.
from last year. It's since gone up. This is my bill last year. And I think this was peak winter. So my bills are substantially more now this year, actually. But and I had a late payment charge in there. But anyway, the gas supply charge is my actual usage, and that was $146.13. The federal carbon charge was only $54, but it's gone up twice since then, the federal carbon tax increase. So that's not an accurate reflection of what it's like now. It's actually on par with whatever it is you use. And then you can see that you have all these other little fees, a customer charge, delivery to you, transportation
what the hell is a customer
to
charge?
Enbridge.
What is a customer charge? Just for the pleasure of being
with
Enbridge customer?
Enbridge, I guess. Yes, it is crazy. And then there's a cost adjustment, and then there's HST, so another tax on all of it. It is absolutely crazy. And if we could eliminate that federal carbon charge for my bills in particular, that cuts my bill in half right away off the bat, every month, cut in half. And that's substantial. And that's just here in Ontario. So I wish we had a premier like Scott Moe, but instead we have the progressive conservative Doug Ford, who won't take a hard stance on pretty much anything other than trying to make cherry cheesecake during lockdowns.
Yeah, I'm just
gross.
I feel so bad for the rest of the country. Scott Moe is a conservative. Danielle Smith is a conservative, and you know it, right? Like
That's
it. Doug Ford, if you didn't know what political party he belonged to, I don't think that you would confuse him for a conservative.
No.
If you just looked at his policies and his public statements. Let's move along to a segment we're calling Liberal Campaign Fun. Thank you once again, whoever compiled the schedule, because I am deeply plugged in to the electricity of the Chrystia Freeland for re-election campaign. I was there for her completely empty campaign office kickoff where two people showed up and a third person, quite possibly a passerby who didn't get out of the frame. And then she was knocking doors, and the photos were very obviously from the same apartment building because it had the same trim and the same peephole. And you see, look at this. Are you excited? And then at the when they were knocking doors, it looked like proof of life hostage videos. Like in some videos, she was the hostage, and other videos, the people were the hostage, but nobody seemed happy to be there. And now she was joined by her friend, the Right Honorable Jean Chrétien. Oh my Lord. And many of our incredible Liberal Party candidates to open my campaign office. Together we are strong. Now, Jean Chrétien, I remain shocked that he is still alive. But maybe even the devil don't want him, as my dad used to say. This man was the last man who signed off on the residential schools as the Indian Affairs Minister, yet nobody ever asks him about it. They trot him, like you'd think that they would be hiding him away because of that fact, given that there's all this controversy around residential schools these days, but they know the media is not going to ask him. They trot him out, and then we have the obligatory diversity shots at her campaign office.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm glad to see, as a little side note, that Chrystia has purchased some clothes that fit.
I'm happy
It
to see a
really,
pantsuit. I'm thrilled.
we're stepping up the level of professionalism ever so slightly here. And that, at least, if there's a positive to be found in all of this, is one of them.
You know what? Yes, I'm on team Freeland pantsuit. I want her to dress like Hillary Clinton. The boring pantsuit where I don't see a flash of flesh at all. I'm there for that. I am. I'm excited for that, and I hope she continues to go in that direction for the sake of her children, honestly.
Yeah, and the rest of us, really, but them first, I suppose.
Yeah.
We'll get into
She
one
took away
other
their
story.
Disney Plus. She took away their Disney Plus. She could at least cover up. Anyways, one last story. Yes, and I love this one. This is the perfect place to close the show. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, actually, Sheila, let me read through this quick ad read, because it helps us to keep the lights on and our journalism flowing, and then we can just wrap up with the last story.
Okay.
So we have a script here to share with you from Truth Social, and it reads, if you're looking for a great place online for news, discussion, and entertainment, then check out Truth Social. It's Donald Trump's social media website. You'll get breaking news, stories, and commentary from top media figures. If you want to see Trump's legendary Truth Social posts, then get on Truth Social today. Join a growing community of patriots on a free speech platform designed to avoid censorship and cancellation by big tech. Make your voice heard, join the movement, join Truth Social. So there you have it. And Sheila, this is one of your favorites. Do you want to take us away with the Yukon Strong?
Okay, let's just show this. Evan Solomon continues to be also a shining star in my Liberal campaign fixation. Evan Solomon, you know and love him as the guy fired from CBC for secretly brokering deals in the art world for Mark Carney and Jim Pasilli of BlackBerry. If you're young, you don't know what a BlackBerry is. So Evan Solomon, he retweeted 2 days ago a parody account called Mark Carney's Ego with a bus that had a harsh word on it that I don't generally use. But anyways, Evan Solomon reposted this. Then it has the World Economic Forum logo on there. And he didn't delete it. Like, it was crazy. And then now there's this new one. So every day, another Evan Solomon gift to us all who enjoy political comedy. This is his new post. His campaign office opens. Mark Carney and Evan Solomon, Toronto Centre. He's so proud to be running, but what a perfect encapsulation of what the Liberals and their policies have done to big cities. Let's zoom in on underneath the it's so gross, and I'm sorry in advance, but I also showed feces on the Wayne Gretzky statue. So we can see graffiti,
there it is.
urine, feces, and this was their campaign photo. So I'm going to guess they maybe even cleaned this up a little before they took the photo. But this is just crap on the streets, pee on the walls, elbows up, wieners out, turds on the streets. This is the Carney Canada that they want to continue in perpetuity. They're as they say, the natural governing party of Canada. Well, this is what you get if you continue to vote for the natural governing party. These are their own campaign offices. Imagine what they would have happen to your street.
Yeah, you want to talk about au naturel. There's some poop on the sidewalk for you. You can't get much more right into nature as that. And if these, as you say, if these are their campaign offices, this is what the streets look like in front of their campaign offices. Take a gander down some other side streets in Toronto and see what you'll find. You know, already we're seeing just fecal matter, bodily, other, questionable fluids, and some garbage there, some litter. So,
I think that's a condom. I'm like, did they kick the needles out of the frame? Like, it's so bad. And he left this up. I can't wait for the next Evan Solomon flub. I can't.
I'm laughing because otherwise you're just left to cry.
I just, You know what? We should deploy David down there to see if this has been cleaned up.
I love
I'm
some
gonna
of the
write that
comments
down.
here. You need to one our a former rebel, Catherine Krosnowski, says the urine stains are a great sign of how it's going and the liberals' inability to make friends with reality. Like, sometimes just reading these comments is any sort of pick me up. If you need a pick me up after seeing this, just look at the comments because they are without fail. There you have it. There's the Liberal leadership kickoff candidates. There they are, standing in front of poop. So yay, Canada.
I'm messaging David right now and seeing if he has time at some point today to just swing past that campaign office and see if they've cleaned anything up or if it's worse. Someone should put flowers there. Oh, God.
Little memorabilia.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that's
All
it.
right.
Unless we have any chats left, but I'm not sure.
I think that is it.
Okay.
Look at that. And we're
great.
pretty much right on time. I know the studio has to be used shortly hereafter. So I guess we can wrap things up.
Yes. Tamara, thanks for being my co-host today. Olivia, Efron, everybody who works to put the show together behind the scenes so that it's there for you when you want to click on it. We appreciate you so much. We also appreciate everybody who kicks in a little bit of their hard-earned money to keep the lights on here at Rebel News, and our sponsors who trust us to get their message out to the rebels of the world. I think that's it for the show today. I'm hosting, I think, tomorrow. I don't know with whom. We'll find out. It's a surprise for you and for me. And as my friend David Menzies always says, and I've started saying that he does not take his own advice, stay safe and stay sane.
The message to President Trump should be to knock it off. We had the best trade relationship in the world, in the history of the world, before these unnecessary interruptions struck our economy. And they're hurting both sides of the border. They will kill American jobs and they will erase American prices. And we will necessarily have to retaliate. He should lift these tariffs. And but whether or not he does, because he's changed his mind before, he's done this twice, puts them on, takes them off, and we can suspect that may well happen again. We have to become more self-reliant and have new and different markets so that we no longer rely on or depend on what is becoming an increasingly undependable customer.